On the day her divorce was finalized, Marguerite Kell was told to leave with nothing. She walked out of the Ames house with $41 folded in her coat pocket and no idea where she'd sleep that night. Her phone was down to its last sliver of battery when a message lit the screen, an old classmate forwarding a placement notice nobody respectable would answer. Live-in maternal figure wanted for 3 children. Room, board, salary, and protection provided. She stopped on the word protection. A locked door the Ames family couldn't reach was already more than she'd had an hour before. The address led her to iron gates on the edge of Rittenhouse Square, and only after the butler let her through did she learn whose house it was. Cassio Varela, the Don of Philadelphia's oldest Italian crime family. She had wanted a bed for one night. Somehow she became the legal mother to his 3 children and the contract wife of a man the whole city crossed the street to avoid. Weeks later, her ex-husband Whitfield Ames would stand in front of her with that same tired arrogance and ask if she'd finally admitted she was wrong. Before she could open her mouth, the youngest of the triplets stepped between them, small fists full of her mother's coat. "My mom wasn't wrong," the little girl said, and her 2 brothers closed ranks on either side of her like they'd rehearsed it. Cassio put a hand at Margo's waist, and his voice went cold enough to lower the temperature of the room. "Mr. Ames, my wife owes no explanation to a man who lost the right to speak to her months ago. A woman answering a childcare ad had never once imagined it would end with her married into the most dangerous family in Philadelphia. But that's exactly the story Margo Kell fell into one rainy night with nothing left to lose. New stories drop here every single day. Subscribe now so you don't miss one." The butler who met her at the gate introduced himself as Sasha, and his eyes moved over her rain-soaked coat and the worn handbag she gripped like a life raft. "Miss Kell," he said, "this house doesn't hire women to decorate a room or charm the dawn. If you walk through that door, the children come first, the household rules come second, and your curiosity comes dead last. Don't ask about the locked doors. Don't repeat names you hear at this table. Don't promise those children anything you can't keep." She told him she understood. 8 hours earlier, she'd signed divorce papers in an office that smelled like money and disinterest. The prenuptial agreement left her with no claim on anything Whitfield's family owned, no right to the house she'd called home for 3 years. Whitfield hadn't even shown up. He'd sent his assistant with one line: "If she wants to leave, let her leave clean." She'd signed and walked out with $41 and whatever fit in one bag. Margo was not a small woman, and she had never once apologized for it. She was plus size, curvy through the hips and shoulders in a way that filled out a coat properly, with dark, wavy hair she never bothered to flatten, and a face that had learned the hard way not to flinch. She'd been smart enough for an Ivy League acceptance letter once. She was smart enough now to walk into a stranger's mansion at midnight and keep her spine straight while she did it. Whatever waited past those gates, she meant to meet it as exactly who she was. Sasha led her past portraits of Varela men long dead, past a private chapel where candlelight caught old bullet scars in a silver candelabra. A side door opened, and a man stepped out with a rosary looped once around a gloved hand, one bead cracked down the middle. Dark hair combed back, gray eyes flat and steady in a way that made her think of a locked door rather than a person. She didn't need anyone to tell her his name. Cassio Varela had inherited this family at 17 and rebuilt a collapsing empire out of dock unions, private casinos, and negotiations no newspaper ever printed a word of. His gaze settled on her. "She's the applicant," he said, and Sasha lowered his head. "Yes, Don." The dining room was chaos dressed up as elegance. Dinner sat untouched on a table long enough to seat 20. A boy of about 6 sat at a chessboard, jaw set like a much older man's, informing the room that someone had promised to finish this game with him. Another boy stood beside a chair clutching a blanket, eyes red with sleep, still somehow negotiating for a bedtime story. The youngest, a little girl in a high chair, was crying so hard her whole face had gone blotchy, one fist wrapped around a white rabbit toy, her bowl untouched. "I won't eat," she wailed. "I don't want another woman." Cassio stood among all three of them, brow drawn tight, and Margo understood in that instant that this was a man who could silence a union boss with a look and still be completely undone by a 4-year-old's refusal to eat her dinner. Cassio sent the boys upstairs without ceremony over loud protest, then bent down and picked up the crying girl. "Bibi," he said, his voice dropping low, "look at me. You have to eat something tonight." She buried her face in the rabbit instead. He turned the child toward Margo. "Get her to eat 3 bites, and you can stay the night." Every person in the room turned to look. Margo set her bag down. "Give me a napkin and a pen," she said. She crouched until she was eye level with the child. "What's her name?" she asked, nodding at the rabbit. "Pearl," Bibi whispered. "Miss Pearl." "That's a beautiful name," Margo told her, and meant it. Bibi studied her the way a cornered animal studies a stranger. "Do you want my daddy to like you?" she asked. "Whether your father likes me isn't my job," Margo said. "Tonight I just want you to eat dinner." She drew 3 boxes on the napkin, 3 bites. After each one, you mark a box. When all 3 are full, I leave the table, and tomorrow you decide if I'm allowed back. Bibi blinked at the napkin. "I decide? For dinner, yes. What if I say no?" "Then I won't bother you at breakfast either." That answer seemed to surprise the girl more than anything else that night. "1 bite," she whispered, and let herself be spooned a mouthful of cooling soup. Bibi marked the box with a crooked, triumphant line. "That counts," she announced. "It does," Margo agreed. The 3rd bite she took on her own terms, leaning forward and slashing through the last box before anyone could ask. "Will you leave tonight?" she asked, watching Margo with total focus. "Not tonight," was all Margo offered, no promise she couldn't keep. Bibi considered this, then pushed the napkin across the table. "You can come back tomorrow," she said, and something shifted in Cassio's gray eyes, though he said no word of praise. He only told the maid to heat more soup, and told Sasha to ready the 2nd-floor guest room beside the nursery. Before Margo could pick her bag back up, both boys came down. The older one handed her a broken music box with a ballerina missing 1 arm. "Bibi listens to this before bed," he said. "It's broken." "I can try," she told him. The younger one muttered that his sister didn't like her milk too hot and didn't like strangers touching her hair, then seemed to regret saying so much and bolted upstairs. "You handle a frightened child well," Cassio said. "I just didn't rush her," Margo answered. "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, my study," he said, and she assumed he meant an employment contract. He was half right. 2 documents waited on his table the next morning. One was an employment agreement. The other was a marriage contract. "I thought I was here for the children," she said. "You passed last night's interview," he told her. "Now I need to give them someone who can actually stay. The Varela family has enemies watching these children. A regular nanny can't get through the security system, can't sign medical authorizations, can't stand beside them at school events as family. Bibi has watched too many people leave already. She needs a mother written into the law." "You want me to marry you?" Margo said. "On paper. Where would I live? 2nd floor, mine is on the 3rd. How far do my duties go? Care for the children, attend Varela events as Mrs. Varela when required." "And the rest of it?" she asked. He tapped 1 line on the page. "There is no such clause." "What about money?" she asked. "A personal account gets opened in your name. Anything that lands in it is yours, even after a divorce." "Even then," she repeated, "I've signed an agreement like this before. It left me with $41. Cassio turned to the lawyer waiting in the corner. "Add a clause," he said. "All funds transferred to Marguerite Kell's personal account during this marriage remain her separate property. Full stop. No exceptions after divorce or termination." "Caring for children is labor," he told her. "This family doesn't take labor for free." "The Ames family never called it labor," she said. "Then they were poorer than they looked," he said, and she almost laughed. "If the children ever don't need me, can I leave?" she asked. Yes, he said, I won't stop you and I'll make sure you're compensated and protected either way. The contract was dangerous in ways she was only beginning to understand, but it gave her boundaries and an exit. She picked up the pen. Afterward, he lifted an obsidian and gold brooch from a velvet box, stamped with the Varela crest. Wear this, he said, and the household will know to listen to you. He pinned it to her coat himself. A small sound came from the doorway, and Bibi peered in with the rabbit in her arms, brothers crowding behind her. Are you going to live here? She asked, staring at the crest. The agreement says I'm staying, Margo told her, and Bibi didn't understand the word agreement, but she understood staying. Can she come into the children's wing? One boy asked Cassio. Yes. Can she tell the kitchen to stop making the milk so hot? Yes. Can she be in charge of bedtime stories? Bibi asked. That depends on how long the story runs, he said, and Margo answered short, and the boy nodded like a verdict had been reached. Over the first week, the second floor stopped being quiet. Every morning, Bibi arrived at her door with the rabbit, every excuse circling back to the same real question, are you staying today too? Every time, Margo said yes. The older boy sat near her while she worked on the ballerina's missing arm, reciting exactly which screw not to touch. The younger one complained she read too slowly and still shoved a storybook into her hands every single night. Cassio left early and came home late, and some nights when she went down after midnight to warm milk for Bibi, she'd find him at the far end of the table with reports spread out and quiet men waiting nearby. On the seventh morning, she told Sasha she needed to run errands, the music box repair shop, then the pharmacy for a prescription. All three children appeared in coats before she reached the door, the missing ballerina arm wrapped in tissue, one boy insisting his sister couldn't be left to cry without backup. Bibi has not willingly left these gates since her mother disappeared, Sasha told her quietly. All three climbed in. At the shop, the owner fit the tiny arm back onto the ballerina and wound to the key, and the melody trembled out. Bibi held her breath until the figure began to turn. She's dancing again, she whispered. Outside the pharmacy afterward, she unclipped the pearl from her rabbit's ear and pinned it to Margo's coat instead. This keeps bad things away, she said. Cassio was waiting at the curb when they came out, coat over one arm, eyes moving over the three children walking calmly at Margo's side. Thank you, he said. They were good. That night he brought her a set of keys. If you're taking them out again, he said, you need a car that doesn't announce my name 3 blocks away. The next morning, a battered gray Saab sat outside the garage, wildly out of place beside the line of armored sedans. Bibi declared that the rabbit approved of the color. The guards will still follow, Cassio told her. Call me if anything happens. A week later, Margo took the triplets to a preview evening at the Varela Children's Sanctuary Fund, where one wall held drawings submitted by children across the city. Bibi's drawing of the rabbit had been chosen crowned with a lopsided crayon tiara, and she'd insisted the rabbit needed to see it in person. Margo was kneeling to fix the ribbon on Bibi's dress when a familiar voice found her. Marguerite. Whitfield Ames stood near the champagne table in a suit tailored within an inch of its life, an aide beside him holding a portfolio stamped with the Ames surgical seal. I almost didn't recognize you, he said, eyes traveling from her hand at Bibi's hem to the 3 children flanking her. Ivy League graduate, and now you're playing dress-up for Mafia children at a photo op. Is this really the life you've landed in? Bibi pressed closer to Margo's side. Margo kept her voice level. Whitfield, move. Still stubborn, he said, eyes dropping to the crest on her coat without a flicker of recognition. I suppose life outside my family taught you something, at least. Whatever you complained about before, you were still Mrs. Ames. What are you now? A nanny with a borrowed brooch. We're divorced, she said. That doesn't erase 3 years of being my wife, he said, his voice cooling. People still think of you as an Ames. Watching you play hired help for the Varelas makes me look ridiculous. Bibi looked up. Why is he talking to her like that? She asked softly. Because he's used to getting away with it, Margo said. Don't act tough in front of children, Whitfield said. You left me to make me regret it. Fine. You surprised me. He reached toward her shoulder the way he used to, and she stepped back before his hand landed. Enough, he said. The other women meant nothing. Nobody's moved into your room. The position of Mrs. Ames is still open. I'm not interested, she said. His eyes went dark. You're not in a position to say that, he said, lowering his voice. How much money do you actually have left? Do you think the Varelas will ever treat you as one of their own? His gaze slid to the children, smile turning colder. Taking care of 3 Mafia kids, Marguerite? You'll do anything to prove a point. The older boy's eyes went flat and cold. This is between adults, Whitfield told him. Bibi hugged her rabbit tighter, eyes reddening, and Margo pulled her behind her own body. Whitfield, I'm telling you once. Move. Admit you were wrong, Marguerite, he pressed instead. Go apologize to my mother and my sister, and I might let this little performance end. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Then Bibi let go of Margot's hand and stepped in front of her, rabbit clutched to her chest, small body trembling but her voice ringing out clear as a bell. Who said she was wrong? Little girl, when adults are speaking, Whitfield started. She wasn't wrong. Bibi cut him off. You can't talk about her like that. The younger boy planted himself at her side. You hurt her, he said. You can't. Is this how the Varela family raises its children? Whitfield demanded. The older boy shielded Bibi from the other side, calm in a way that unsettled grown men twice his size. Whitfield Ames, he read off the badge, director of Ames Surgical. You just insulted a guest of the Varela Foundation, then called Varela children ill-mannered for objecting. The men flanking Whitfield had quietly stopped smiling. Her situation is excellent, a low voice said from the entrance. Cassio walked in, Sacha a step behind, the crest catching the light on his black suit. The murmurs in the room died instantly. Bibi's eyes lit at the sight of him, but she stayed exactly where she was. Her job wasn't finished. Cassio crossed the room and straightened the crooked brooch at Margot's chest. Mr. Ames, he said, there's been a misunderstanding. She's been emotionally unstable lately, Whitfield started, and I was only... You called her the Varela family's nanny, Cassio said, level. And the men near Whitfield had already begun distancing themselves from him. I'll correct that. He took Margot's hand. Marguerite Kell is my lawful wife, the mother of my 3 children, and a co-sponsor of tonight's preview. Impossible, Whitfield said. Why is it impossible? Bibi demanded instantly. Because his eyes don't work, the younger boy offered. That's a fact, not an insult, his brother clarified. Sasha leaned in and murmured that Ames Surgical was on tonight's supplier list. Remove it, Cassio said. Don Varela. Ames Surgical has supplied this foundation for 3 years, Whitfield said. You can't cancel a partnership over one word from Marguerite. Cassio looked at Margo. Do you want to give him that chance, he asked, and the whole room turned to watch her answer. Marguerite, don't be childish, Whitfield jumped in. Hundreds of employees depend on this company. She thought of the message he'd sent through an assistant on the day of their divorce. If she wants to leave, let her leave clean. You said I embarrassed the Ames family, she told him now. In that case, the Ames family shouldn't want a partnership handed to it by someone who embarrasses it too. The color went out of his face by degrees. Cassio had the supplier list reissued on the spot, the Ames name struck from every copy. Bibi slipped her hand into Margot's. Did I do good, she asked, and Margo crouched to fix the clip in the girl's hair. You did wonderfully, she said. Cassio offered his hand. The main hall's about to open, he said. She thought about how Whitfield had once told her she had no standing at all, and here she was with a hand to hold in every direction. She took it. Let's go, she said. If this story's got you hooked, hit subscribe. There's more waiting for you. The ride home was quiet, Bibi's fist gripping Margot's coat the whole way. Upstairs that night, the younger boy left a slice of cake on her nightstand, leftovers from the event. The older one handed her the folded event program, and inside it were the names of everyone who'd stood near Whitfield, their companies, even their license plates. Why did you write all this down? She asked. He might come back, the boy said. We need to know who he brings, his brother added. Bad people bring helpers, BB said, nodding along. Cassio knocked before the boy could carry the program off to him and read the notes standing in the doorway. Well done, he told the boy, whose shoulders finally relaxed. I helped too, the younger one insisted. The man in the blue tie had the fakest smile in the room. Also useful, Cassio said. What about me? BB asked. You stepped forward first, he told her. After the children went to bed, the room went quiet. Whitfield won't be welcome at another Varela event, Cassio said. Thank you, Margo told him. You don't need to thank me, he said. It's mine to handle. I don't want your family standing in front of me for everything, she admitted. I already left one house where I had no say. He watched her a long moment. Protecting you doesn't mean owning you, he said. From the moment you signed that contract, anyone who wants to hurt you goes through me first. That's not charity, and it isn't control. It's responsibility. Nobody in the Ames family ever said anything like that to me, she told him. Then they were poorer than they looked, he said, and she laughed despite herself. 2 nights later, the family held its annual charity gala at a private opera house by the river. On the surface, the guests were businessmen and foundation directors. Underneath, dock unions and private casinos. Margo wore a black velvet gown with the crest at her chest. Nervous, Cassio asked. A little. Walk with me when you need to speak, he said. I'll be looking at you. He was pulled away by men from the docks, and Margo was alone near the windows when Whitfield's voice found her again, his ease from the preview gone. Ames Surgical got the notice pulling us from the supplier list, he said. Are you satisfied? That was the foundation's decision, she said. Cassio Varela listens to you now, Whitfield said, dropping his voice. One word, and Ames Surgical goes back on the list. Cassio arrived without a sound and didn't look at Whitfield at all. Do you need me to handle this? He asked her. You said you'd look at me when I needed to speak tonight, she reminded him. I am looking at you, he said. She turned back to Whitfield. Whether Ames Surgical goes back on that list has nothing to do with my feelings. Your supplier records from the last 3 years will be reviewed. Pricing, sourcing, procurement accounts, all of it. If there's nothing there, the foundation won't hold a grudge. Do you understand what you're doing? He asked. Yes, she said. Cassio had Sacha put the audit team on the Ames Surgical records first thing the next morning. You can't investigate my company over one sentence from her, Whitfield said. She asked for a review, Mr. Ames, Cassio told him. She didn't pass a verdict. If your company's clean, you should be thanking her for the chance to prove it. Do you want to stay? Cassio asked her. I want to go home, she said. Then we go home. On the ride back, when she peeled off her gloves, her hands were cold. Cassio reached toward her and stopped halfway, waiting. She placed her hand in his. His palm was warm. You handled that well, he said. I only followed the rules, she said. That happens to be this family's preferred method. He'll probably hate me even more now, she said. He already lost the right to come near you, Cassio said, voice dropping. Marguerite, you don't have to hold yourself together every single time. His eyes dropped to her mouth, then shifted aside deliberately, and he drew her wrap back over her shoulder instead. Thank you for asking me first, she told him. Your voice is yours to use, he said, not mine. The next morning, half the city already knew the audit had begun. BB didn't follow the details, only sat beside Margo with the rabbit and quietly pushed a folded note toward her plate, one word scrawled in crayon, Mom. Before breakfast was over, the gate intercom crackled. Whitfield Ames was at the entrance, insisting he had something to hand to Mrs. Varela personally. You don't have to see him, Cassio said. I'll see him, she said, but not alone. Whitfield stood beyond the bars looking worse than the night before, a dark envelope in one hand. Inside were old photographs, a key she no longer used, a scarf she'd nearly forgotten owning. My mother isn't well, he said. If the past ever meant anything to you, tell Cassio to stop. She understood he hadn't come to apologize. He'd come because Ames Surgical was losing something he couldn't afford to lose. "The audit isn't my fault," she said. "At least remember you lived under our roof for 3 years," he snapped. Bibi slipped past Sasha and planted herself at Margo's side. "Why should she give way to anybody?" the girl demanded. "This is Varela property," the older boy told him flatly. "You're asking for help very, very badly," his brother added. "Is this how you're teaching them?" Whitfield demanded. "Do you honestly think they see you as their mother? You're only the woman Cassio hired to keep his children stable." Bibi's eyes reddened, but she stepped forward instead of back. "She is my mom," she said. "Ours too," her brother said. "It's written in the agreement," the youngest added, "and we accept it." Cassio stepped exactly 1 pace forward. "You were allowed to stand here because Marguerite agreed to see you," he said. "She's seen you. From today, you're banned from all Varela property." Bibi took Margot's hand. "Mom," she whispered, "let's go home." 2 quiet days passed. That afternoon, Margo finished the music box repair, the broken ballerina replaced with a small silver rabbit, the old mechanism cleaned and oiled. "It works," Bibi breathed, watching it spin. "Did my mom know how to fix things too?" she asked quietly, the first time she'd mentioned her mother at all. "I don't know," Margo said gently, "but I'm sure she wanted your things kept safe." "She left before she could fix it," Bibi said. Cassio sent the children to the greenhouse before dinner. Their mother didn't leave by choice, he said once they were alone. 3 years ago, someone inside this family betrayed one of our roots. My brother and his wife were run off a bridge coming back into the city. The official story was an accident. It wasn't. The children were there, in another car. The oldest saw the fire. His brother heard the gunfire. Bibi was too young to understand. She only remembered her mother promising to fix the music box the moment she got home. Only then did Margo understand why a broken toy had been kept for years. They needed a surname that could keep them alive, he said, and guardianship no family council could strip away. The marriage contract was part of that, too. A nanny can be replaced. A legal mother is much harder to remove. "I didn't tell you before because all you needed then was somewhere safe to sleep," he said. "Now you've stood in front of them in public. I won't keep showing you only half the truth anymore." "What happens when they're grown and don't need me?" she asked. "That depends on whether you want to stay," he said. "I won't use the children to keep you here, Marguerite." Something in her chest loosened and ached at once. "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" "I want you to stay," he said, "for reasons that have nothing to do with the contract or the children." He didn't step closer. He only asked, "May I touch you?" And she nodded. He brushed his fingers along the side of her face, careful, like he expected her to pull away. She didn't. He kissed her temple, brief, and something in her finally settled. Then a voice came from the hallway asking if the music box could sit at the table for dinner, and he answered, "Come in," ears faintly red despite the calm on his face. The audit results landed sooner than she expected. 2 batches of children's rehabilitation equipment supplied by Ames Surgical had failed procurement standards outright, priced 35% above market, the overage routed through a private Ames family foundation. "So he really is bad," the younger boy said. "Will he come after Mom again?" Bibi asked. Sasha reported that Whitfield was already at his lawyer's office, requesting a meeting. "I want to see him one last time," Margo said. "With your people present." Whitfield looked worse than she'd ever seen him, tie loose, eyes bloodshot, files scattered in front of him. "The board suspended me," he said. "If the Varela Foundation eases off, we might still fix this. Talk to Cassio. You have that kind of power now." He'd once told her she had no power at all. Now he was admitting she had power only because he needed it. "Do you remember the message you sent me the day of our divorce?" she asked. "If she wants to leave, let her leave clean." "I left with $41," she said. You never said a word in my defense, not once. That was the past, he said. Not for me, she answered, and watched the last of his composure crack. I won't help you, she told him, and I won't take revenge either. The Ames family can face the consequences of its own choices the same way I faced mine. He had no answer. When he reached for her arm as she turned to leave, one of Cassio's men stepped between them before his hand ever landed. Does the past mean nothing to you? Whitfield asked, panic finally in his voice. She thought of a note in crayon, of a boy saving her cake, of another writing down every name that might threaten her, and of a man who told her that protection wasn't ownership. The past isn't a reason to let you keep hurting me, she said, and walked out without looking back. 3 weeks later, the foundation had replaced every one of its medical suppliers. Cassio never mentioned Whitfield again. Every morning she woke to Bibi debating with the rabbit over which dress to wear, one brother accusing the other of stealing his waffle, the other calmly noting the waffle had been on his own plate the whole time. The estate had stopped feeling like only a fortress. One morning, Cassio slid a document across the table. Appointment of Executive Director, Varela Children's Sanctuary Fund. What is this? She asked. You're already doing the work, he said. The foundation needs somebody who actually cares what happens to these children once the cameras leave. You're sure you want this to be me? She asked. I'm sure, he said. Pearl votes yes, too, Bibi announced, lifting the rabbit. This isn't part of the original agreement, Cassio told her. You can say no. She looked out at the white roses in the courtyard and thought back to the night she'd wanted nothing more than a bed and a hot meal. What sat in front of her now was so much more than shelter. She picked up the pen and signed. A month later, Cassio gave her a wedding that belonged only to the two of them, in the family's private chapel, candles lit, white roses lining the pews to the door. No press, no crowd. Bibi walked first in a pale dress, the rabbit in her arms, carrying herself like she'd been handed a serious family duty. One boy carried the flower basket and tried twice to slip candy into his pocket along the way. His brother, holding the ring box, caught him both times. Emergency backup candy, he whispered back, unrepentant. Margo stood at the chapel entrance, wanting to laugh and cry in the same breath. Cassio waited at the altar in black, candlelight softening the hard edges he usually carried through the world. She walked toward him, remembering how she'd told herself the first time she signed his name beside hers that it was only ever a transaction, clear terms, a safe room, a way out if she needed one. This time she didn't hesitate before taking his hand. The ceremony was short. When the priest finished, Cassio slid the ring onto her finger, his thumb pausing 1 extra second over her knuckle. This time, he said quietly, there's no expiration date. Then I want to add a clause of my own, she told him. If I stay, it's because I chose to. Accepted, he answered, and a quiet laugh moved through the little chapel. Bibi ran to hug her skirt. So you're really not leaving now, she asked. I'll stay, Margo told her, and Bibi placed the rabbit carefully into her arms. Then Pearl agrees too, she said. That night, the dining room was louder than it had ever been, the music box turning slowly through its old melody, while one brother stole a second slice of cake, and the other quietly pushed his own strawberries toward his sister. Margo looked around the long table and thought back to a rainy night with $41 in her coat and one thought left in her head. Find somewhere to survive. Now she had a room, a family crest, a battered gray Saab, 3 children who checked her doorway every morning to be sure she was still there, and a man who had never once confused protection with ownership. Half asleep against her arm, Bibi asked if she'd still be there tomorrow. Yes, Margo said, and kissed the top of her head. Under the table, Cassio found her hand and held it. Outside, the iron gates of the Varela estate stood quiet against the dark, and inside them the lights stayed warm. She was no longer a woman merely taken in by somebody else's house. Here, she had her name, her place, and a light left on, waiting for her to come home. And that's where we leave Marguerite Kell tonight, chosen and finally home. A new story like this every single day. Subscribe so you don't miss it.